The introduction is actually 6 parts. Well, let's do the 6 parts because almost every story you need an introduction for. So the first is, do this with me, do the hand signs with me. Introduction. Introduction. Then you tell the story. Tell the story. Then you ask for a volunteer to retell it. And in the fall in the garden, it was Chastity who volunteered to retell. So I'd raise hand, retell. And then we do a lead through. Like you're taking a rope and you're leading an animal through. Lead through. That's when we all told the story together the 3rd time, right? I led you through it. I began to tell, and you filled in the blanks, or you finished the sentence. You know, we told it together. That's a lead through. Then, for about 20 minutes, we did spiritual observations. Do this with me. What do we see in the story? What do we see in the story? What does God want us to see in the story? And we find out by asking good questions of the story. The questions were questions like, from what this character said and did, what do we learn about this character? And what other choices did this character have? And what do we learn about God in this process? So that's spiritual observations. You go through section by section or scene by scene through the story, asking spiritual observation questions. Then the last 5 or 10 minutes, you saw I shifted. And I said, today, do people today speak and act and do like the people did in this story? We go, oh yeah. And we go stories about being in debt, or, you know. That's application to the heart. Application. Do this with me. To the heart. And the key word there is today. Today, that's application today. So do that with me again. Introduction. Everybody do it with me. Introduction. Tell the story. Ask for a volunteer to retell. Lead through. Spiritual observations. Spiritual applications. That's the 6 parts of the process. Now, I'm going to tell another story. And I want you to be aware, as I do it, of those 6 parts. I won't signal them to you necessarily why we're doing them, but be aware that those are the parts of the story. And here again, I prefer, because this is an oral storytelling process, which I want you to learn to do orally without dependence on print and notes. I'd like you to just close your Bibles and put down your pens and notebooks, close your notebooks. Do this as an oral experience. Part of the discipline of this method is to do it orally. We're so dependent on our notes and notebooks and pencils and you know, following everything. But you know, one of the great movements in missions these days is we're aware now that about 70% of the world is non-literate, can't read or write. Most people don't realize it's that high. It is. And so if we're going to fulfill the Great Commission to bring the gospel to every tribe and people and nation, we have to be able to do so orally to non-literate, illiterate people who can't read or write. How do we do that? Storytelling. Oral storytelling in the Bible. And so a good practice of that, and especially if any of you feel called to minister to non-literate people, the oral storytelling process is really key, because you can do this. People can learn these stories and retell them without having to read or write. It's all oral. So let's enter the oral zone now, and I'll tell you another story. This story took place in the very early days of humanity. In fact, it took place among the very first family on earth. And in those days, now, the parents had fallen from God and were separated from God and experiencing the consequences of that, but they had children. But yet in those days, humans were not allowed to, had not been trained to, had not been accustomed to, and really had not been allowed to eat animal flesh. They only ate vegetables and plants of the earth. This story is about the first 2 brothers on earth, and they would have grown up with their parents either whether it was around the evening family dinner table or the campfire. They would have heard the stories of their parents telling what had happened in their lives. So here's the story. That's the introduction. Here's the story. Now, Adam slept with his wife Eve, and she conceived and gave birth to Cain. And when she gave birth to him, she exclaimed, "I've got another human being with the help of the Lord." And sometime later, she conceived again and gave birth to Abel. Now, as the two boys grew up, Abel became a keeper of the flocks, sheep. The shepherd became a shepherd. Whereas Cain became a tiller of the ground, a farmer. And in the course of time, Cain brought some of his crops as an offering to the Lord. And Abel also brought an offering to the Lord, the firstlings of his flock, a firstborn of his flock with the fat portions thereof as an offering to the Lord. Now the Lord was pleased with Abel's offering, but he was not pleased with Cain's offering. And this made Cain angry, and his face fell, and he was sullen and dejected and moping, and God says, "Why are you angry? Why is your face fallen? If you do well, won't you be accepted? But if you don't do well, sin is crouching at your door, and its desire is for you. It wants to devour you, but you must master it." Well, sometime after this, Cain suggested to his brother Abel that they go out into the field together. And while they were in the field together, Cain rose up and killed his brother Abel. Well, afterward, the Lord came to Cain and he said, "Where is your brother?" And Cain said, "I don't know. Am I supposed to know where my brother is all the time? Am I my brother's keeper?" And the Lord said, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood is crying out to you from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood at your hand. So now you will be a fugitive and a wanderer in the earth, and no matter how hard you work, the crops and the fruit of the soil will no longer feed you and prosper you. You'll be a fugitive and a wanderer for the rest of your days." And Cain said, "My punishment is too great to bear." That's the end of the story. If you volunteer to retell it,